There's like this like honeymoon phase when you start to get a camera and all these things, trying to get into filmmaking, and then you quickly realize, oh, I got to run this as a business,
Mm.
and suddenly these skills are a little less important, and you need to switch all these kind of like technical skills into more, real freelance business skills. There's no point in being, embarrassed or like scared to show your work, because at the end of the day, someone needs to see who you are and what you do for them to hire you. This imposter syndrome thing kind of always stays there until you start doing enough work and you start to kind of like, outwork any of these feelings. And that's a very common thing too, where in the beginning, it's like, if you're not just doing enough work or you're not staying busy enough, your brain as a filmmaker, as a creative, you kind of just start to get into this really negative cycle. Have you ever imagined what it feels like to pitch to clients and them saying yes without any problem, even though the numbers are huge, right? So like we're really going to be talking about today the difference and what it takes to become a filmmaker that's confident in their rates, how to actually pitch higher numbers, how to actually position yourself better, and actually ultimately become a better filmmaker, because you're going to do better work when you have more budget to work with, and ultimately, become a stronger creative.
And you can live.
And you can live, which is always great. And the big thing too is if you don't learn these skills, you're gonna be in this perpetual pain point where you can't pitch for more. You're gonna be having no confidence when it comes to pitching, and you're never gonna work and elevate your skills because you can't even get the jobs because you don't value yourself, and other clients won't value you because they can see that. So today we're gonna cover all those things. We're gonna show and help you break through that kind of myth of what it feels like to, be undervalued, and push you guys into a place where you're comfortable pitching, understanding what you want to be doing for long term, and ultimately become a better filmmaker. Hey, if you don't know who we are, this is Juanjo. I'm Jason from Tenfold, and we're going to dive right into it. So number one is the confidence gap. So any questions on what that is?
The confidence gap. I've never heard of this before. Is this like imposter syndrome or something?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
So it's kind of the idea of when you first start out, everything feels a little bit like, open rain. You think you're a lot better than you are, because you're starting to learn skills at a fast pace. So naturally, you're just kind of collecting all these skills. Over time, over the next like 6 to 12 months or so, you start to realize that maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
And like things start to sink in, right? There's like this like honeymoon phase when you start to get a camera and all these things, trying to get into filmmaking, and then you quickly realize, oh, I got to run this as a business, and suddenly these skills are a little less important, and you need to switch all these kind of like technical skills into more, real freelance business skills.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the trip up for a lot of people, because as creatives first, it's very easy to be creative, right? And I want to do more of that. But the realism of this career in this filmmaking space is that, half of it is business. I wouldn't even say half of it. It's probably like 80% of it, right? Like a bit of an 80-20 rule here, because you can't even do more creative work if you don't have the money or the funds to sustain a business.
Totally.
Right. And so, the confidence gap kind of comes into the idea of like, this is where that imposter syndrome starts to build, where you're like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Maybe I'm not like a filmmaker. Maybe I'm not even like really meant to be in this space. And I know this because I was going through it in my first year.
I think we all have been there.
We all have been there. Yeah. And it's like this constant like flow of like, this feedback loop can be very toxic. And it just kind of like constantly builds unless you start to find a more very specific direction and systems to kind of like eliminate any guesswork.
Yeah. And then where does this affect you? Is this like during like actual set, or is this like pitching?
The bigger thing is it clouds everything, right? It's like this imposter syndrome thing kind of always stays there until you start doing enough work and you start to kind of like, outwork any of these feelings. And that's a very common thing too, where in the beginning, it's like, if you're not just doing enough work or you're not staying busy enough, your brain as a filmmaker, as a creative, you kind of just start to get into this really negative cycle.
Yeah.
And you start to watch other people's work and all these things, like such a common thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you just sit there and you're like, oh God, I'm never going to get there, or I'm never going to do work again. And then it just kind of spirals downwards, and it stops you from putting out more work. It stops you from advertising yourself or marketing yourself. And that's really the biggest thing. It's like you look at all that and it kind of starts to reflect in all your work in your portfolio and how you showcase what you do out to the world. So yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword where, the value and the skills that you trust in yourself start to kind of diminish a bit. And like, that's the opposite of what you're trying to do. You're trying to showcase yourself being out there all the time, raising the value of how people perceive you by being constantly busy or doing work that excites you and the work that's a little bit more aligned with who you are as a filmmaker. And so it all starts with the mindset first, right? Not being able to like see yourself in a larger light or a better light is going to hold you back in terms of like how you actually showcase yourself to the world.
Mhm.
It's very easy, right? Where you just start to kind of hermit yourself away from the world. Um, Back then, I used to think like, let me just kind of keep grinding quietly in the shadows. And that's kind of like the opposite of what you want to do in any case scenario, right? It's like personal branding is so big right now
Mhm.
that you want to be standing on your own laurels of like who you are and like who you are as a filmmaker first and showing the world what you're capable of. There's no point in being, embarrassed or like scared to show your work because at the end of the day, someone needs to see who you are and what you do for them to hire you.
Mhm.
So like that's like step one mainly.
Yeah. I suppose like if you're not confident in yourself, it will affect you in all aspects of production, especially like we're talking about valuing ourselves here. If you don't value yourself, the client's also going to be like, why should I pay you all this money?
Exactly. It definitely goes both ways. Like how you showcase yourself to the world, how you speak to the world. These are all little like I say like Tetris blocks, right? It's like they are constantly being stacked up, and you need to make sure that you're stacking them up across the board, right? So everything kind of makes sense. Like you showcase yourself, loving work more or less, like BTS stuff like that as well. All these little pieces actually stack up into building your brand and who you are, and giving people reasons to actually hire you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you can't just expect to sit there and like, have people reaching out when you don't showcase who you are, what you do, or you don't even speak to it, right? So like you're not even going to be able to give yourself the chance to pitch projects or like sell projects if no one knows who you are, what you do, and like ultimately all leads back to like personal branding as well.
Okay, so if that's the case, then what can you do to increase your value in the eyes of like yourself, but also the clients?
Yeah, the number one thing I think is positioning,
Okay.
right? Positioning across all boards. So when you're first starting out, you are just kind of creating everything, right? We've spoken about this before,
Mm-hmm.
where everything's a little bit scattered. You don't really know exactly who you are, what you want to do. But ultimately, it becomes like who you want to become and like putting that out there to the world. And so in the beginning, I just had like a videographer in Toronto, whatever.
Yeah.
And if I put myself as a videographer, I'm going to consider myself a videographer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if I consider myself a videographer, everyone else does because that's what's visibly out there into the world,
Yeah.
right? So it does take the natural step to actually change that to become who you want to be, because you could stick a videographer forever, but the second you change it to like a cinematographer or a director or whatever like that, it just kind of sometimes you need to trick your brain a little bit to just be like, I am okay to say that, right? I think in the beginning I was just so uncomfortable with like I haven't really directed anything. It's like, well, okay, cool. You're also not going to direct anything if you don't put it out there that you're a director,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're closing off the opportunities for yourself. So I think even step one is just like becoming who you want to become, right? Like and putting that out there in the world and like allow your brain to like accept what that is, and then over time it's like it doesn't even become a second nature thing anymore. Like it doesn't even become like you're thinking about it all the time, you're stressed
Yeah.
about it. It does become second nature, and it's like, oh, cool, that's who I am. That's like the first step to it. Positioning for most cases and for most people out there is equally as much as like what you're showing and what you have to eliminate. So in some cases, like if you just have a mixed match of everything going on, it's like how do you start to build a portfolio or a look so people when they land on your page as their first impression, they understand who you are immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just may be like starting to do some more spec work, right? Like create things on your own, like force yourself to do these things because if you don't do them, a perfect job's never going to show up for you. And so you're just going out there to create and like start to actually carve out what your image looks like, right? And this goes for everything, right? So it's both on your website, your socials, how you speak about yourself as well. It's like all these things kind of add to this kind of like Tetris block, right? So you always want to be like one step ahead in terms of, okay, where am I trying to go? How do I actually start to think about what the next steps are?
Yeah.
What are the next steps for this year, for this 6 months, whatever it is? Start to like knock things off in that progression so you can actually get there, right? Because you can just keep thinking about in a year, it's like, I'm going to do these 5 projects. I know so many people that are like, I'm going to do so many spec projects. And then if you don't purposely like go out there with intention to plan it, you
Mm-hmm.
it just never happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose if you don't position yourself as what you want to be, you're never going to get that next step opportunity. So that makes a lot of sense when you said you have to be a step ahead of yourself, even.
Yeah.
Because if you don't show that to the world isn't going to find you. You kind of have to carve that out for yourself.
You have to go and get it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think there's like a mentality that's sold in the beginning when you first start. It's like, just grind quietly. And like, I'll show up like a year later and suddenly I have this like, you know, this like portfolio of work. It's like you don't find new people to work with. You don't find new clients if you just are quiet in the background,
Mm.
right? Like a lot of our best work that's come through the door has been us just posting the work that we've been doing and opening up the doors and giving other people opportunities to see us, right? And like even working with like new kind of production companies or like new colorists, new post houses, whatever it is, it's like these are all new circles that kind of showcase and like open you up to different pockets of the world. So whenever we work with like a new colorist, we're like, cool. If they were going to post it because their work is good enough, then suddenly whoever's following them now sees us as well.
Mm.
And so you're constantly playing this game of like expanding your reach through your network. And like that's like a step, like step 2 almost of like the basics of it all. Because how are you going to even find crew or people that are local to you to start working with, right? You're never going to actually make it big, unfortunately, in this world if you just don't know anyone. Like it's truly a game of networking,
Yeah.
knowing who's out there, how the systems work in terms of like how agencies work and how it kind of dwindles down to production companies and then to directors and so on. And like these are all the little things that you need to learn. But if you're just stuck in your own kind of bubble right now and you think that the world is going to come to you, it just doesn't, right? Like you have to be very actively approaching it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm just thinking back to like all the times I've pitched before now, because I would always be in those calls and be like, I can do this for like a couple $100 if that works for you guys. Like, let me know if that doesn't, and I can always like reposition.
Yeah.
Like that conversation.
I've had that all the time. Yeah.
So considering that, like, how does that reflect in like the client's eyes then? Because I assume they're not gonna be filled with the most confidence.
Yeah. It kind of goes both ways, which is fun, right? It's like you personally are coming from a position of like, I don't even trust myself. Like I just want the job. And like
Yeah.
this is kind of where having like money as the ultimate goal there kind of like deleverages you. So like you don't feel as confident. Like let's put this into example. Like if you had $1 million, right?
I
And
wish.
then yeah, and then you're pitching the same project. Would you be stressed about that $300?
Definitely not.
Right. And it's the same idea too when it's like when you're in this position where you don't have any money and you just want a job to happen, you kind of put up this different like persona, which is almost like I need this, but I'm trying to show you that I'm not like I don't actually need this.
Yeah, but it reeks of desperation.
It reeks of desperation a little bit
Yeah.
times, especially when you don't come at it with confidence and everything. And so truly, whatever number you put out does reflect more on you more than anything. And then also like depending on where the client's coming from, it can reflect on them too. So like it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah.
Like we've spoken about this before in the past of like if a client's coming at you and there's like it's like a small business and it's run by like maybe 1-2 people and it's like it's smaller, like they're just still setting up their systems and everything, like there's probably a range in terms of how much they can actually pay you, and so you're already playing within this range. And then even if you want to pitch more or bigger projects to them, it's the same thing. It's like you're never really going to push past that boundary.
Yeah.
Right. Unless like same thing. If they have unlimited funds, then that whole conversation changes. Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you can switch to finding better clients that value you more and they value the general idea of video and what it can do for you. It's just like there's different tiers of clients at every range, right? Like sometimes you just want to hit the higher budget clients that understand the value of what you do, what they're going to do with it as well, so they can find exact like return on spend, right, for their ads and stuff like that, if that's what they're creating from it. On your end, if a client's coming to you that's like, hey, I have $500 for this, then that makes it a lot easier in most cases because you can decide whether or not you want to take on the project or not.
Yeah.
But for most cases, people are like almost like fishing, right? They're like, hey, can you quote this out for me? It puts it onto your onus and your shoulders to be like, I need to pitch this out properly. And to do that, you actually need to know what numbers look like, right? In the beginning, you make up numbers because you're like, I just want to sell things. And you don't even take into account all the little details that actually is put into actually creating a great project. And we were in this space for so long. We were always struggling to push past 2,500 because we're like, oh, that's a lot of money. And half of that was because these were the clients that didn't have that much money in the first place.
So it puts you in that mindset.
It puts you in that mindset too. Yeah. You're just battling with each other. And you're like, these are two people that don't really have money right now that need to like maximize the project. But at the same time, it's like, I need to maximize like making money as a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
And that's always just like a bad place to work in. But when it comes to, actually selling and pushing the idea of like, how to raise your rate past a certain rate, the easiest place that no one really talks about is eliminating emotion from it. And so a lot of people in the beginning, back to it of like, I need $500 because you're doing math in your head. Like, oh, how much do I have to make this month? How many of these do I need to make so I can like eat, right? Or if you're starting to work more people, it's like, oh man, $500, that's $250 each. And it's like, that's instantly gone because like, maybe I have a camera, but like I wanted to upgrade it, or like, you know, you're thinking so logistically in terms of like product itself that you don't even think about, okay, there's cost in terms of like your time, labor. That's kind of the biggest one, right? People think, you know, we've talked about this of like, hey, I could, if I do 5 of these, that's 2,500 for myself as a film, like a videographer. That's super money. I could be rich if I just do like 20 of these too, right? Over the next 2 months or whatever. You start doing these calculations because you need it to work. And you start to think about that and you're like, oh, this needs to work. But then you start to actually look at what it takes out of you. A $500 project by yourself means that you're prepping it, you're shooting it, you're editing it. Probably late nights, you're probably fried after those as well. Takes you probably more than a week. You have revisions back and forth. And then suddenly you're like, I just spent 2 weeks to make $500. And then suddenly they're like, yeah, I'll pay you in like a month. And you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, it's like those systems are so common in that space that, you know, there's a reason why people talk about positioning in this case. It's like we were stuck and positioned based on our portfolio and what we were showing the world in maximum $2,500 range. The work that we were showing was only recaps or like small business kind of like VBCs, like video business cards. Just like, who am I? Who are you? You know, it's like slow B-roll and stuff like that. It's like you're not gonna really use that to push yourself into the commercial world or into bigger ranges of pricing. So you need to look at it and be like, here's a holistic view, kind of like, you know, out of body experience. If you're looking at yourself from like an outside perspective and you're like, what does this showcase to you, right? What does this brand mean to you? Is it showcasing that you can do higher level projects, that you're working with bigger teams, that you can actually execute on bigger, better projects? Or are you showing the world that like, they're probably like, you know, like sometimes you can go on a page and be like, I see what type of work you do.
Yeah.
And like we do this naturally with other people too. We just box people up, right? It's like you go on like a new videographer's page and like they're super excited, and the work that you see they're doing is like they're pretty much the same as what you were doing, and you're like, oh, I know how much maximum you're charging for your work, right? And then you look at like some of the top directors in the world, and you're like, oh, I saw this on the Super Bowl commercial, and you're like, I know what range you're going at, and you're in the millions, right? And so it really just showcases like, as simple as it is, we're all making videos. It's just the scale of videos that you're doing and then how the world is going to perceive you, right? Like that's the whole perception game.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It kind of made me think of like this analogy, and not to sound corny, but it's kind of like a video game, right? And you're on the first stage and you're constantly killing the same boss, and it's only like giving you like 50 XP, and you're like, when am I gonna like how am I gonna level up? If I kill this boss like 100 times, then like maybe I'll get there. But you gotta move on to the next stage if you're really trying to level up your game.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. It's like you just have to get uncomfortable and then try new things and realize like, oh, maybe that's actually the better direction.
Yeah.
Right.
But in that sense, like, how do I get to that next stage? Like, how do I approach like the next boss, quote unquote? How do I even find it? Because I feel like a lot of people within the space, they'll like look at it and be like, well, I know these people, but well, what do I like cold DM like Nike or someone?
Yeah.
But that's not how that works, right?
No. Yeah. Cold DMing Nike never works.
Yeah, like the actual like product
yeah,
page, like,
like,
yo,
hey Nike,
love your work.
yeah. I'm sure everyone in filmmaking in the sports world has done that. It's like, hey Nike, I love your work, would love to shoot for you one day. And then you get this bot response or no response at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, of course that's gonna happen.
It's
right?
like a coupon code.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're gonna Google this and be like, does this work? And it just doesn't, right? And you gotta imagine like how many projects Nike does in a year. And like, there's a reason why they're that big. And it's not because they reach out to individual videographers to do projects. Like they work with companies, they work with production companies, they work with agencies, right? There's a whole system involved there. For people that are starting out at the simplest stage, it is just realizing who you're trying to become and like being a little bit more conscious and intentional with what that means, which means you're going to be working much harder and doing much more like intentional work that actually puts you in that direction. Typically that's just like spec work and starting to work with like people that are better than you, because at the end of the day, again, you're not that good.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, like you're just not that good because you don't know enough, right? And like you need to experience yourself and like immerse yourself in that world to realize like, oh, this is what happens when 2 people work together. And then
Mm-hmm.
this is what happens when 4 people. And then suddenly you're working on like 20, 30 people sets, right? It's like you need to actually go through those stages. I always say this too. It's like you can't shortcut your way all the way there.
Totally.
There are moments where you're like, I needed this to happen to learn these technical skills to get up to that next level, right? And there's also things called like what we call technical specs, which are a lot more simple, and like you're learning skills and how to like whether it's how to direct this or how to like light this properly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to do specs that are a little bit stronger and bigger, that are more commercial specs that have like more of a storyline and feels and aligns with the actual brand itself.
Mm-hmm.
But there are steps and levels to this, and for most people it's starting at technical specs, which means that, you know, once you've aligned with your North Star and who you are and what you're trying to become, you're going to start doing these projects in a much more like intentional way,
Mm-hmm.
and starting to build more of like a local group around you. Again, like you said before, finding close people around you that you just know that are just down to work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like no really money involved. It's just like, hey, you guys, you want to show up? This is how we started as Tenfold. It's like, hey, we're all doing these like small projects together. We're kind of like stuck at this $500 to $1,500 range. It's like, we know we can do more, and we know we're like trying to become commercial filmmakers and stuff like that. It's like, do you guys just want to work together?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the biggest thing that stops people and holds people back is being in a very like competitive mindset, right? It's like a scarcity mindset, more or less,
Totally.
where you think like there's only 10 jobs a month that exist.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lose it to that person over there, you get pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, how is there no other jobs? There's people that have told me like, there's no jobs out here. I'm like, well, we're currently working on one. So like, there's no way.
That's
like,
clearly not true.
I know there's tons of people working on projects right now.
Yeah.
And when things are slow for you, it doesn't mean it's slow for everyone, right? And there's a lot of people that complain of like, hey, the industry is slowing down. It's like, yeah, but even if the industry is slowing down, it's like you still need to be on top of it, because like, are you just gonna let that kind of control your entire career in life? It's like, what are you gonna do on top of this to actually get ahead of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like we came up in a space too where camera prices were coming down. We were getting, working with cameras that we didn't think we could actually work with in the past. Like Red started to become a lot more available, and then like that was fun and cool for us because we're like, cool, nice cameras. Like it's actually accessible to us. But then ultimately you realize like, oh, it's just ultimately always the story, right? It's like, how do you sell a vision? How do you sell a story within these projects? And then even with like all these, projects coming down, like camera prices coming down, the best people were still the best people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they were still really good at selling to agencies and making director treatments and like actually creating these projects. And we thought we could always just keep climbing. But what's happening is like, even though budgets are coming down in terms of like the commercial world, we were coming up now at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were becoming these like nimble kind of smaller production companies that are taking the pieces of the pie from the top level. But if you're starting from the very top back then, it's like you could only work on $1 million projects, for example.
Yeah.
Then it gets much more of a struggle coming down on that price, because agencies or clients don't want to pay as much money,
Yeah.
right? It's like, are you just gonna allow yourself to get eaten by everyone else and quit the industry,
Mm-hmm.
or are you gonna try to like just keep leveling up and be better and do more,
Yeah.
right?
And those big guys are also kind of like strapped down by like pre-existing salaries or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because we were talking to our editor friend, and he was telling us like these juniors are making so and so, and then the seniors are making like so and so, and like you put into that perspective, and immediately you're like, I need to make this much money on a singular project just for it to make sense for us all to be like working here,
Yeah.
right?
That's
So,
why the game is super competitive.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you're not willing to work hard enough for it, well, good luck,
Yeah.
right? It's like we had this like fire and this chip on our shoulder, even though no one was really after us,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of like this Michael Jordan thing where like you just like,
You're like pissing yourself off.
yeah, you piss yourself off to be like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. You turned me down this project. Watch in a year, like I'm gonna charge you triple 5 times. I'm not even gonna work with you.
Mhm.
You know, it's like it's kind of like this kind of like petty energy.
Yeah.
But when you're coming up from like the videography space, it's like you don't have kind of the insights of that space at all, right? Like you actually don't understand how agencies work or production companies work. Like we had to figure this stuff out as we went.
Mhm.
And it's all these little like ticking off of like, concepts and ideas
Mhm.
that you start to be able to stack things up and like, oh, I like these parts of it.
Yeah.
Let me kind of take the best of the best from what I've learned and what we've gone through, and then from there, like, become something that's a little bit more unique and nimble that only you can kind of offer.
Mm.
And that's kind of been the game for us, at least, right? So it's like, it's very easy to kind of just quit and be like, blame other people, right? And like extreme ownership is super important for us of like, even if things go well,
Yeah.
good for you. If things go badly, well, it's still your fault,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no one else to blame, right?
Yeah,
You can't
totally.
blame the client. Like if it's truly the client's fault, you probably didn't do enough in pre-production,
Hmm.
right? If you think like the budget's not big enough, it's like, well, you could just like tighten up on your budget on the back end too, or like be more resourceful. It's
Or
like,
more realistic.
or more realistic, exactly. And like that's the whole idea of like, it's very easy to just be like, put blame on other things.
Hmm.
But the world, like at the end of the day, if I'm doing this for the next 20 years or whatever, it's like every decision that got me there in a successful way, I'm going to be proud of it because I'm like, I made these decisions,
Mm.
right? And if I fail, I fail,
Yeah.
right? That's part of the game.
Yeah. So let's run it back a bit. I get the sense that like the whole point is you got to build out these specs. You pretty much have to build out a portfolio that A, you're proud of because you need to build that confidence within yourself. But B, you need the world to see that A, you're confident, and B, a lot of A, B, A, B. It's like
Yeah.
algebra. But like you need the world to understand that you can execute and you also have the ability and the confidence to take on bigger projects, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you're in a position where you make this great project and then you put it out into the world. Let's say it's YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, whatever. You put it out, like 70 likes, 300 views.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's happened to a lot of people before,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean the project is bad, right?
Yeah.
Like what is that person doing wrong in that scenario?
Yeah. Oftentimes it's a metrics game,
Okay.
right? So if you're not presenting it in the right way, or you cared so much about just like 70 views or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's further than the point, right? It's like you need to look at are those 70 views even important views,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like are those 70 people even the people that you want to see this, right? You have to be a little bit more like forward facing in terms of finding the right people to showcase this to.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes things like BTS does better than the project itself,
Totally.
right? It's just to showcase like it's constantly a game of proof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said earlier, being able to show people that you know how to function and do this work at this scale, at this level,
Mm-hmm.
is going to do way more for you in terms of raising your value. And the flip side of it too is like being able to actually finish a project of that scale
Yeah.
means that like you've given yourself that self-confidence of like, oh, I can actually make this happen, right? You want to make all these mistakes in your specs jobs because then you actually have all these skills in your back pocket now. So when a client does come, you're not messing up on a real paid and like kind of like pressure specific environment. You're actually working on something that's exciting for you that like, oh, cool, I've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of that whole idea of like, you're just constantly outworking, that kind of like insecurity or those fears that you have. And it's just like doing more and doing more. In the beginning, when we first started doing specs, we were like doing like 2-3 a week.
Yeah.
And it was just like this nonstop kind of, it was me and Justin, right? So it was like this nonstop kind of like cycle that we were doing. And it's like, if we just did one and we just waited around, we would not be sitting here right now whatsoever. Because it's like, what do you think is actually going to happen? You're going to put out this one, it's going to be the life-changing moment for you. It's like, you need to prove that you're consistent, right? We always talk about this like marketing trifecta thing. It's like, you're consistent, optically, you're showcasing who you are, and you're reliable, right? Like these three things are so important for people. And just to break that down a little bit more, it's like, being consistent means like your work is consistent across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like from one job to another, it's like either the voice is consistent, the style, all these things. People do relate and see it and showcase that like, oh, they're starting to build a style here, right? Reliability kind of relates more on the client side of things. It's like, can they actually execute when they need to execute, right? When clients kind of come out to figure out like, are these the right people to do it? Sure, they can make great looking things, but have they worked and worked with other clients? Have they worked with other like brands that actually showcase that like, regardless of the kind of like situation, they can still show up and make sure that we're not putting our money in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Right. And then like at the end of the day, like having this kind of trio of the optics as well of like everything you do is seen by someone.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our craziest work that we've gotten has been like, oh, how did you find us anyways? And they're like, oh yeah, you posted this story about this random project.
Mm-hmm.
Or you posted this, like sometimes we have like really big jobs land from like this recap that we did. Like or like this like small story thing, and we're like, I was not expecting that to be the thing that like has now generated like 6 figures for the business, right? It goes to the point of like you just never know. So it's always about putting your best foot forward, showcasing to the world like this is who we are, right? It's like putting yourself out there and being comfortable with it and creating a voice and a style for yourself
Mm.
that when people think about us separately outside of, what we do, it's like, oh, Tenfold is the nimble production company that can like make things happen,
Mhm.
right? And still output a really strong like team, system, whatever it is, experience. Like it all kind of relates back to that.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier because I mentioned like 70 views, arbitrary number, but you said that out of those 70, like the right person might see it. So I think a lot of people's mindsets might be wrong and they're just hoping that they post something and then the right person sees it, right? They're hoping that the algorithm gets it to like the top exec
Yeah, yeah.
and then the job comes their way. But is there a more, like you said, forward facing, more tactical approach that someone can take to make sure that like this project that they invest all this time, money, energy into is seen by the right people so that an opportunity can open up for them?
Yeah. So if we get a little more tactical on this, what we used to do when we first started was we actually didn't even have like a production page.
Mm.
So we were just posting stuff kind of by ourselves. And then we kind of did some like reverse engineering, which is ultimately the best skill you can have in this industry, is realizing that the biggest brands out there, whether it's production companies or people who you're trying to emulate and
Mm.
be down the line, they're presenting their work a very specific way. Whether it's like a 3 post or like a video with like the logos on it to kind of showcase like the
Yeah.
level of skills and projects that you have. It's understanding who you're trying to be and like what you can do feasibly in terms of your business, right? And then understanding like, okay, I need to actually show up a very certain way, or else I'm not even in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like if someone jumps onto your page or your company page and it's like it's just a mess of everything,
Mm.
and it doesn't kind of give that instant level of like credibility or confidence that like you're the right person for it, then you've just shot yourself in the foot too. Then you can just imagine those 70 views means nothing at
Yeah.
all. It's just all friends and family that like your stuff, right?
Yeah.
So like we made the very intentional approach of like branding and personal marketing. It's going to be like the top thing for how we showcase our work.
Mm-hmm.
And for the scale that we were at and how fast we were moving, even locally, it does show up in the right way because we were doing enough work at that time too, in combination with like starting to brand ourselves properly to show up to the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like a big rung for us of like, okay, we're gonna start climbing this ladder a bit now because like the right people are seeing us, the right voices, and like how we're actually approaching things and how we're actually presenting ourselves. Again, it all comes back to positioning, right?
Yes.
It's like if we just kept going at this solo pace of like, "Oh, I'm gonna just put up random projects that don't really mean anything, you might not have the opportunity ever to kind of like keep moving your way up.
Mm. Okay, so I guess the last thing I want to cover now is when it comes to actually pricing, then how should someone who's in my position approach that?
Yeah. Give me an example of like a pricing problem you're having.
Mhm. So I think at least me a couple months ago, I would just approach it and I had like this made up figure in my brain of
Yeah.
like, I think this is what this job entails. Like, this is what this is worth. I think it's a whole lot of unknowns. I think that's the biggest problem. A lot of
Yeah.
people just like don't even know what the basis is.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even go about figuring that out?
Yeah. The secret to this that no one talks about is understanding a pricing budget breakdown,
Okay.
right? So sometimes it gets a little bit more difficult because you don't know even what the prices are,
Mhm.
like what the standard prices are. And it's actually something that we've created in Set Memory as well, which is like a whole budget breakdown that allows you to like actually sell your projects properly based
Mhm.
on the briefs and everything. Um, but you need to start actually doing enough jobs to realize like there's different deliverables, what that means in terms of the long run.
Mhm.
We've created something like a client brief checklist, which is actually like a full walkthrough of like how to actually ask these questions, because from there it's like you know exactly what the full scope of this project is, what the deliverables are, and it puts the ball and leverage back into your court, right? And I say that for the sake of a lot of times clients are coming to you
Mhm.
or whoever's reaching out to you to fish a bit. And sometimes they're like, can you just quote this out? But they haven't given you any information.
Mhm.
And so now you're just quoting out of nowhere,
Yeah.
right? You're like, okay, they need like a 2-minute video. Okay, just telling you it's a 2-minute video gives you no information, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like, what are the deliverables? What's the timeline, right? Like, how long will it actually take? Like, when do you need this out by? Because you need to work backwards on that as well,
Yeah.
right? Creating a work back schedule, all these things. Like, is there usage rights to this? Like, are you going to try to push it for ads and stuff like that over the next year?
Yeah.
There's extra cost for that. If they say, and like, oftentimes the easiest thing is just getting a reference as well. It's like, hey, do you have a reference that you can send us of like what you're trying to aim for? Oftentimes clients aren't very good at spelling out, especially if they're like direct to brand. It's a lot easier for agencies, but sometimes if it's direct to brand, they struggle to be like, I'm looking for like a commercial, and you're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like there's
What is
so
the
many,
difference?
yeah, well, there's a million commercials. Like, is it a documentary style commercial? Is it like pure product commercial? Whatever this is. And it's your job as the filmmaker, as like the person running the business, to get as much clarity and information as possible about the project before you even talk about numbers. I also don't even jump into calls that often first. Like, I like to pre-qualify pretty much everyone beforehand to be like, hey, give me all this information, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the project? What's it look like reference wise? Timelines, deliverables, usage rights, all these things. And then if they can't give me that, then I'm definitely not jumping on a call,
Oh yeah.
because then it's like, you don't even know what you're looking for. You're clearly just like fishing around. And I'm like, I'm not going to waste time if you're going to waste my time, type of thing. And it's just being very upfront about that, because every opportunity when you first start out seems like an opportunity. But most of them are actually going to just ruin your life. And
Yeah.
like, it's like, if you're already giving red flags in that sense, I'm not going to spend time kind of like diving deeper into it. And so I always like to set that foundation first, because here's the flip side. You don't ask these questions and you just say $500.
Yeah.
Happens all the time, right? Or you say $1,000 and they say yes. And you're like, yes. And then they're like, great. So there's 45 edits here and it's due next week.
Yeah.
And then like, we're going to use these usage rights. Like we're going to just sign this off.
Yeah. You just like sold your
you just
soul,
sold your soul
for
pretty
$1,000.
much. And then a lot of people trap themselves in this because they're scared to ask these questions up front.
Yeah.
When you should have just, get the pain over with. And sometimes like, it's the opposite of pain, because you're saving yourself from a project that's going to put you in the hole forever.
Yeah. And I suppose by like not even asking those questions,
Yeah.
like not even vetting the project, it kind of goes to show like you don't really know what you're doing or what you're talking
Yes,
about.
exactly.
You're just like you're chasing the bag pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a taster for both sides. It's like you almost need them to be like, oh, why are you asking these questions? Great. That's the right questions that I'm looking for. And here are the answers. And so like you can slowly get your way through that, where if they give you the full scope of everything, it makes sense. Then you actually, again, you have leverage again. You get to, you get to constantly be the person that decides whether or not you want the job or not. Right. And so they've given you all the information. Old you would have just given a number, but now new you is like, okay, great. That's actually good information. Sounds like something I want to work on. Let's jump on a call. Let's talk about this. Talk about the idea. What's, how you want to both approach it potentially. And, in this kind of direct to brand world, it's kind of mushed all into one.
Yeah.
It's like you're kind of asking all the questions, and like having all the questions, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, you should just be asking, right? It's like, these are all the things that you need to figure out now so you can give an appropriate quote. It's like, how many talent are you expecting for this? Like, how do you want this to play out? Oh, I saw your reference and it looked like there was like a lot of crew or like a lot of locations in this. Are you also looking for a lot of locations similar to this? Do you have any locations available? Do you have any like thing that we can like leverage on our side? Like, do you have an office or all these things that we can shoot in?
All these things affect like pricing,
It's all pricing, right?
because it's all overhead costs, right?
That's the thing that people don't realize. When you start to quote numbers by emotion, you throw everything out the door, because you're just like, there's no basis for
It's
anything.
not tethered to anything.
It's not tethered to anything. You're just like, I just want money. I want 2,500. Okay, this is a $25,000 budget or like expense project. Like, you're gonna cover that with 2,500. You know
No
what I
way.
mean? It's like, what are the goals of this brand? It's like, oh, we actually want to make this campaign so we can sell our product, right? It's like, cool. How much does your product sell for? It's like, oh, $4,000. It's like, okay, so if this is a $4,000 product and they're only trying to pay you 2,500, is there a value discrepancy there? 100%, right? It's like, if your whole goal is just to sell one product for them and say that's like the type of conversion kind of campaign you're going for, then you at minimum should be charging $4,000. Even if you're uncomfortable with it. And like, it's such an easy conversation afterwards. It's like, oh, great. So our goal here, if you reflect it back to them, is like, you're trying to like sell product from this. So even if we sell one product, like, it's a win for you.
Yeah.
It's like, great. So like, that's going to make you how much? $4,000. Cool. Like, great. At minimum, you're going to just charge $4,000.
That makes sense.
Right. And like, that's an easy way to kind of start scaling yourself up. In your scenario, when you were talking about like, okay, you've asked all these little questions here, you've gotten all the information, you still don't bill based off of emotion, right? You need to actually go and do some research on your own, figure out how much things cost, and to realize like, okay, have I done anything at this scale before? And if I don't, I need to go ask people and other professionals about like, how would I actually approach this, or producers, or whatever it is, because it's so easy to undervalue yourself still. And all these little like details catch up to you. Because the worst thing you want to do is like bill for $5,000 on a project, and you finish it and you're like, I just spent $6,000 and you're now negative on the project. So it's just like a lose-lose conversation, because now you're just going to spend more time. You're doing all this energy and time to make nothing. And if it's a money project, like we've talked about before, then automatically that's a loss, right? If it's a passion project, then you have to have that conversation beforehand. But you don't want this stuff to sneak up on you afterwards. And then now you have to justify. You're like, I wanted to do it as a passion project anyways. Like, to take a loss. It's like, no, like you could have did a passion project and also made money if you had planned this properly. And so again, a lot of people just don't realize all these questions are for you to start to like qualify pricing, and everything has a cost to it. And if you don't price for this cost, you're taking that hit. And we used to do this all the time, where I would just take the hit, and at the end I'm like, I'm just gonna quietly walk away, because I'm like,
I'm just gonna go lie down and
die. I just lost money on this, and I don't even like the project or whatever it is. It's like, at least if you don't like a project and you want to turn it into a money job, make money on it.
Yeah,
because then you can like further that into your career and like buy more cameras. I'm kidding. Spend money on specs. You know what I mean? You know, it's very easy to trap yourself into this world of like thinking you're not worth enough. Most of the times, you just need to price yourself properly.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's so fun because it's tactical. It's like, it's very specific down to the numbers. And when you remove the emotions of it, money, like pitching money in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, I got to pitch an $8,000. I used to talk to like the guys and be like, hey guys, I think I'm going to send it out. And we'd send it and be like, oh my God, you sent it. I can't believe it. You're going to get ghosted most likely. You're not going to get responded to, or people are going to be like, hey, I got like, $2,000 or whatever. The cool thing about pricing, and this is like a tidbit secret for everyone, the cool thing about pricing higher based on what the actual expenses cost is that you have leverage if they come back to say like, oh, you pitched $8,000, but we only have $5,000. In the past, you might have only pitched $500. So like that discrepancy is huge. Now you actually have the control, because they know your real rates, and now you're coming down to like, I could do 5,000.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas before you're like, I'll do it for $500.
Yeah.
So like now you just made $4,500 on top, and you're like, nothing has changed. Literally nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is like you've priced yourself differently. You removed all emotion, and then suddenly you're like, oh, big win. Yeah. So the whole game, at the end of the day, you gotta figure out who you are, right? Trust yourself that like the money numbers are supposed to continue going up. But that only happens when you start to put the energy, invest in yourself, invest in your skills, so you can show the world, show them the proof that you're actually getting better. And ultimately, that's the things that's actually going to push you forward, and like be able to raise your rates and like charge and position yourself properly, so that everyone can actually see like how good of a creative you are.
Yeah.
Don't grind in the shadows, That's like a 2010 thing,
Yeah.
Just put everything out there now. Like you just got to be very strategic about like showing the world who you are and the voice that you have. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. A bit of a ramble on pricing and value. I think this is such a big topic, because everyone goes through this, and if you're currently feeling this way, it's like, how do you just make these more incremental steps to get there? If you have any questions about like actually pricing things, we actually have and sell stuff on Set Memory that's specific to pricing yourself. You even have the free client checklist, the client brief checklist that you can download for free right now, that kind of gives you all the information on what questions to ask, how do we actually approach these things, so you can get one step further in raising your rates and getting a little bit more comfortable pitching numbers, right? Because people hate pitching numbers. But, that's kind of the fun part of it all.
That's why we had this whole conversation.
That's why we had it. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.